John's business is highly specialized, and like many professionals, he thought his opportunities were limited to the people sitting in the room. Then we started talking about horizontal networking versus vertical networking.
I've never thought about horizontally and vertically. I never really understood what that meant until today.
And that's where things got interesting. Because John's challenge isn't unique, a lot of business owners aren't struggling because networking doesn't work. They're struggling because they don't have a networking strategy.
And that's the beauty of it, because it keeps you accountable, right?
Yes.
And that's the beauty of it. It makes you work to create these connections. But yeah, seeing your screen, I think I've already made up my mind. Let me get that checkbook back out.
If you've ever felt like a unicorn in B&I, struggled to explain what you do, or stood in a corner at any networking event not knowing who to talk to, this episode is for you. Join us as we explore business, networking, Clifton's strengths, and why the right strategy can change everything. Welcome to the Perfect 100, the podcast for B&I members who want to maximize their membership, deepen their impact, and grow their business through intentional networking. I'm your host, Tammy Zurak, a Clifton Strengths coach, longtime B&I leader, and one of the few members worldwide to maintain a perfect Power of One score. Each week, we'll explore the habits, mindsets, and everyday strategies of B&I members who are turning their membership into momentum. Hello, and welcome back to the Perfect 100, where we explore B&I, business, Clifton's strengths, and the journeys people take through it all. Before we jump in, I have a quick favor to ask. I recently looked at the YouTube analytics and discovered that only 51% of you people that are listening or watching, more importantly, on YouTube are actually subscribed to the channel. So if you're enjoying these conversations, one of the easiest ways to support the show is to hit the subscribe button. And it doesn't cost you anything. It just helps us reach more people and allows us to continue to bring great guests and content every week. And of course, if you know a business owner, entrepreneur, leader, or team who could benefit from Clifton's strengths or business coaching, speaking, or training, referrals are always appreciated. I work with clients both locally and globally. All right. Now, today's episode is a little bit different. Most of our guests are active B&I members. John Bryant is a former B&I member who is a forensic meteorologist, climate consultant, and expert witness whose work takes him all over the country. As I've prepared for this interview, I realized that John represents a challenge many professionals face. Some businesses fit naturally into referral networking. Others are highly specialized. Some people seem naturally wired to network, while others are wired to execute, analyze, and solve problems. So today, we're going to explore not only John's fascinating career, but what happens when your business doesn't quite fit the traditional networking mold. John, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Tammy. I really appreciate you having me on, and I look forward to this conversation because growing businesses and how you coach businesses is pretty cool. So I think what you do is awesome, and I appreciate you allowing me to be on the show.
Well, it is my pleasure, and I think the audience is going to find this very interesting. So, but let's start where, let's get a little background. So before weather became your career, what were you like as a kid? Tell me about growing up, what your folks do for work, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, my dad was an engineer for a long time, and he was actually a rocket scientist, believe it or not. I just thought about that. I did not get those brains, but he was an engineer for a long time. My mother, she grew up, well, my roots are in Mississippi, but she did speech therapy and worked for Memphis Oral School for the Deaf. And my dad worked for Boeing, NASA, Pickering Environmental. So I do have good inspiration from my parents, that's for sure.
Nice. So you're that one saying, it's not rocket science. In your case, it actually is.
Yeah, well, yeah, for my dad, not me.
I get it, but you could kind of legit say that in my family we're all about rocket science over here. So, so tell me about weather. What first sparked your fascination with weather?
I tell you what, and I asked this question to everybody that is interested in weather. I'm like, okay, and there are a lot of people that are fascinated by weather. I asked them, when did you become interested in weather? I have never gotten an answer where somebody says, oh, just the last couple of years. It seems like people are born, some people are just born to find weather fascinating. And that is me. I've been a weather dork all my life. I love weather, and it's always fascinated me. And I love asking people that question that are weather fanatics. And I have never had one person tell me otherwise.
So cool. So you was the meteorology kind of was just a natural progression for you, or was that something you decided kind of that made sense for what your interests were?
Yeah, well, natural progression because I always knew, which is, I think this is pretty rare, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn or anything because my kids are still trying to figure out exactly what they're going to do. But I always knew what I wanted to do. Now, I didn't necessarily have the confidence. Now, I would always ask my mother, Mom, do you think I have it? Mom, do you think I have it? And she would say, Yes, son, you have it. Yes, you have it. But I used to grow up watching the Weather Channel, and I'm dating myself here, but I would use VHS tapes to tape the Weather Channel and then practice at my house and stop the VHS tapes and act like there was a green screen. This is just a wall of a global map, not to scale, but anyway, that's what I would do, and I just pursued my dream, and it did work out, not necessarily the way I planned it, but it worked out, and it just I will give my mother a lot of credit for saying, "Son, you do have it," because I didn't know, I didn't believe, and she just instilled upon me, you have to believe in yourself if you want to achieve and be successful.
Yeah, I love that. Well, and I listen to a lot of podcasts, and a lot of actors have that where they'll say, when they talk about their background, one of the things that comes up often when I'm listening to them is that they all were acting as a kid, right? They were all putting on shows at their house for their folks or their family or the neighbors. They were looking for the opportunity to be the thing, right? As they were practicing and honing. So I love that you were recording yourself and practicing, that you could foresee moving that forward into a career. So tell me about TV, because how did you get into TV, and why was that the step you wanted to take?
This is how I got in. I have always been a Mississippi State Bulldog, and they, believe it or not, they had a program for, not only did they combine the science, but they also combined the broadcasting element. And I grew up loving Mississippi State because my parents went there, and it was actually just a blessing from God, to be honest with you, because they had the perfect program that I needed for college. And I worked through high school. Germantown High School has an excellent television. I mean, some of the studios that they have at Germantown High School at the time when I was there are better than local television stations. So that helped me. And then, of course, my education, being fortunate enough to grow up where my parents were, had the means to send me somewhere. And plus, I just had the drive and motivation, and I loved it. I really loved what I did in college. And at the time, now this is not the case, but at the time, it was it was the only school in the country that boasted a 100% job placement rate right out of school.
Okay.
So I don't think that's the case now. Things are more challenging. Things are just more challenging in the workplace now, especially in the field I was in. And so, at the time, it was like, okay, I've got a job. I started working in college at not a local station, but I would travel on the weekend, Greenville, Mississippi. And then, to make a long story short, television, normally, you start in a small market, and your goal is to move up, right? And end up in your dream place. But TV, you have to pivot. If anybody's listening to this show or watching the podcast right now, you have to prepare for the unexpected, because different things are going to come your way. You're going to have to move. You're going to be disappointed, but you have to keep going. You just have to pick your bootstraps up and keep going. And so I went to Tupelo for 3 months, and then I came to Memphis and worked for 2.5 decades for three or four stations. And it was really a journey. And I'll tell you how I got a job. On my third job in Memphis, I bugged the heck out of my news director, and I wrote her letters. I called her. She'll tell you I drove her crazy, and she
Right.
finally was nice enough to give me a job, and then it was off to the races. And she believed in me, and Peggy Phillip. I've got to thank Peggy Phillip for giving me my first job, and it really worked out from there.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, there's a lot of stuff in there. So, that stick-to-itiveness that, I think every business owner has. The people that are listening are primarily BNI people, business owners. So that having the, what's the word I'm looking for? Perseverance, right? To work in those. I have an uncle that's in TV. Well, he was in TV. He was a sportscaster. So he all the same things you just said. Work in a small market, or kind of take the comeuppance. You got to take the work in the tiny markets and not make a lot of money to get to the next one, which is bigger, and so on and so forth to get to the big leagues, right? And
Right.
sometimes we never get to the big leagues, or then we shift directions to something else. And sometimes it's really hard, because we thought we were going one way and now we're going another,
That's
right?
exactly
So,
right.
welcome to most people's stories, I feel like, right? Is very few people kind of start out from, especially if you have that dream when you're little, that I want to do this. I'm standing in front of a camera making, videos because I want to do this, realizing that dream. And then sometimes it changes. I feel like that's a common story for entrepreneurs, and your story doesn't end there. We're going to talk about that where it does go, in a little bit here, but. What do people tell me? Because I think you were, a celebrity on television, so I think that comes with that comes some things. But what do people really misunderstand about being a meteorologist on television?
Yeah, well, we could go a long way with this one. And the first thing I will say, and I'm serious about this. Um, I had calls when I first started at the NBC affiliate here in Memphis. People would get mad that it rained, and I said that it was not going to rain, and they actually believed that we control the weather. I kid you not. And so that people would get upset. But I can tell you a misconception. I'm not going to speak for every broadcast meteorologist or meteorologist, in the world, but I will tell you the overwhelming number of meteorologists want to get it right. We want to get it right for who we're delivering it to. Those are our clients. The viewers
Right.
are our clients, and we have to serve them. And so I promise you that one of the misconceptions is that we just get it wrong all the time. Oh, you can keep a job. You'll never get fired because you've got the forecast wrong. And so that's one of the misconceptions. Another misconception is that it's so glamorous, and it's just like the hardest thing in the world. People think it's easy to be a journalist. It's not. And I well, I'm still in the field because I freelance for stations here locally sometimes, but not full time. And I will not go back full time. But I would say that's a misconception. It's one of the most stressful jobs in America and across the planet, really, to be honest with you.
Okay. And why?
Think, I think the number one reason is you're always fighting for ratings, right? I, Typically that's how success is defined in the workplace. If we're just talking about revenue, you're always every show you're thinking, how can I beat the competition?
Right.
What can I do to differentiate myself from beating the competition? And here's the deal: it doesn't matter if you know that you did the best job in the world. You can look at the ratings the next day and you may lose.
Right.
And that is the biggest pressure, is looking at those numbers every day. Well, oh, you're number one? Great. But guess what? That was yesterday.
Right.
It's on
Yeah.
to today. You have to maintain that competition every day to be number one. And that's why I would say it's one of the most challenging jobs in America, and also stressful. I would read those polls, what the top 10 most stressful jobs, and think of journalism. That's easy, right? That's glamorous, right? It's really not sometimes. It's really, really stressful, and it's around the clock. Social media, I remember when that came along, again, dating myself, I was in there before social media, and it was easier. Now the platforms are increasing, and I mean, if you're not careful, you can really, really, let me just say, become a workaholic, and your family life can get compromised. And to be honest, that's what happened to me before I got out, especially as chief meteorologist. It doesn't matter whose fault it is. It ultimately comes back to you as chief. And that's a lot of pressure. Uh, but it's just the way that it is. Those are the nuts and bolts of it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, well, and again, you kind of described, which I'm sure the people listening are hearing, is the parallels between, so you're working with a team, right? So it isn't just you. If the team as a whole isn't meeting those expectations, then you're failing because, especially in the news is a 24-hour cycle these days. So whatever happened yesterday doesn't matter. It's what happens today and the next day. Every day is a new day for you. It's not I mean, you build a reputation and a brand, but that can change in a heartbeat. And it's just like being in business is if you're running whatever business you own or work in, that changes too if you're not working at it every day. And I think what you said is fascinating that you used the word journalist a couple times, and I don't know that people consider that you're standing in front of them telling the weather, but it's much more, right? As you're looking at the weather models all the time, and tell me about what's the biggest weather event that you ever covered?
Hurricane Katrina, without a doubt. I remember I was very young in my early 20s, and I was really I'm a hurricane expert because I've chased so many. That's one of the crazy storm uh, elements of me. I love chasing hurricanes, and so I had experience in college in my lower 20s, and I remember my station, the NBC affiliate at the time, said, "We're sending you to Hattiesburg and down into southern Louisiana." It was a smaller station, so they didn't have the personnel, if you will, and they needed round the clock coverage. And they just didn't have the staffing because smaller stations just don't have the staffing that larger stations do. So they sent me, and I will never forget that experience. Changed my life. And I remember, Tammy, this is something interesting too, that I just thought of off the top of my head. Our job is to serve viewers, right?
Right.
And provide them with life-saving information. That's the most important thing meteorologists do. And I remember saying to the viewers, and I really thought this, that the TV station was going to fall. I mean, not the station, the tower was going to fall on the TV station. And I said, folks, look, if we go silent for a minute, I promise you we're going to get back up and running as quick as we can to provide you with information, but no doubt about it. And it's not just being on TV. It's really connecting with those people when you are off the camera and hearing their story and their journey. And I just remember everybody coming together in that Hurricane Katrina situation. It was miserable. It really was. And we, when the hurricane had kind of come and land, I remember work had slowed down and we thought it was over. And I was at a restaurant, lucky enough to have power. And then we saw the levees break, and it was like, I was with my producer and I was like, oh my gosh. I mean, it was just a moment that is inconceivable. And so there's no hesitation. Hurricane Katrina.
Yeah, that's and that's probably, I don't, we have some viewers that are outside the country, so I don't know that that would make, I think if we're in the United States, we all know that, right? Is that it was such a big weather event. And even in this area, we had a lot of people that lost their homes and ended up here because they just gave up from, I don't want to live in the zone anymore. I'm just done with it. So they ended up moving, and we absorbed, I think, a lot of those folks come into this area. So is that the longest shift you ever worked? I'm always amazed. I don't actually watch local news because I don't have the channels that get me that. But whenever there's a weather event, guess what I do? I go online and I pull up
Right
I
here.
pull up a live broadcast so I can see what's happening. So I know if there's a tornado, because we live in an area here where we don't have basements for the most part. I don't have a basement. So I'm like, where do I need to be? Is there going to be a tornado in my backyard? I need to be prepared if I need to be in a, cubbyhole somewhere. So how about what does that look like?
Yeah, and I will backtrack for a little.
Yeah.
For the global people that are outside of the United States, I was
Yes.
not working, but I was headed to London. It was my first trip to actually get out of America. I was so excited, and I don't know if you remember or not, but there was a volcano that blew up or erupted
Yeah.
and spewed all this ash. I mean, massive eruption. And I remember we had to land in Holland, Amsterdam. I'll never forget this. Thankfully, my buddy at the time, he had some family who lived in Holland, which I was really lucky about that. But air travel across Europe, I believe it was 3 days where air travel was grounded because of this eruption. So for your global audience, if anybody was a part of that, you definitely know what I'm talking about. So I wasn't working, but I'll never forget that. And that's a weather event too. Not the traditional meteorology, but the environment and the way the planet works, it's all tied together. So I forget the question, but I just wanted to say that for our global audience.
Yeah, the longest shift you ever had to work, and now because you
Yeah,
said you were working around the clock for Katrina, and I don't know if that was the longest one you ever. Because when I'm tuning in, I'm thinking to myself, these people are on like and they're saying the thing that strikes me the most is how many times you're saying the same thing over and over and over because you have to keep everybody because that storm is coming across, and you need to let everybody in the front of it know. Do you need to be in your cubby hole somewhere? And that so you're constantly saying the same things over again. So what was that event for you?
yeah, that was Hurricane Harvey when it came into Texas. And believe it or not, our weather patterns are changing, and and hurricanes they're staying stronger now further inland. And so Hurricane Harvey, when it came through Southeast Texas, caused all that rain. I remember there was 31 tornado warnings in a 27-hour stretch.
Wow.
And when it's a tornado warning, you are wall to wall. I mean, you have to keep talking, like you said, repeating
Right.
yourself. So 31 tornado warnings, 27 hours. And I remember being at the station that entire time. I had to take a break, to be honest with you. I
Yeah.
mean, I had to try to sleep an hour. Ice storms when they go on. And here's another thing. I mean, stations now are just breaking news. It's always a fight. They're extending it longer. But I would say probably 48 hours
Ugh,
where I was at the station. Hurricane Katrina was a week. Now I wasn't, on air
always
for,
on. Yeah.
yeah, but I would say to answer your question, I'm trying to think here, probably 24 hours, an entire
Wow.
day.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can't imagine that you're on camera and talking, engaging people and warning them, which is the biggest thing is the only time I see the weather, oh, I shouldn't say that. I look at the weather every day because I have dogs and they are big and they are furry and I do not want to be
Yeah. Yeah. I
I do
relate.
not want to be in the rain with big furry dogs and plus one is terrified of thunderstorms. So I feel like a junior meteorologist every day. I'm looking at the weather going, we should be walking between here and here.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, and the
um,
dogs, they do. You always have to plan your day and time when it's time for them to go out. Then you're like, let me look at the radar. So I definitely relate to that.
well, and one of my dogs is like we know when a storm is coming because he must feel the pressure change and he immediately gets very clingy. And you're suddenly, I mean, he's a 136-pound dog and he's terrified of storms. So when he comes by you, lays down and starts slobbering, there's a storm coming. Like it looks like it's sunny out. No, there's a storm coming.
A German Shepherd, interesting mix. I have a German Shepherd and a Pomeranian. Now, the funny thing is, the German Shepherd is freaked out about storms and is doing the same thing that you're talking about. My Pomeranian, she's just sitting outside, like enjoying it, which is so weird. But yeah, dogs have that sixth sense of when weather is coming. Like you said, pressure changing, and so I do watch animals. Animals really know about the weather, even bird patterns. I mean, I'm fortunate enough to be able to look outside. I live along the Mississippi River, and it's a microclimate of its own. Meaning, just there's different weather here on the island versus what there is in the city of Memphis. But you'd watch birds and how they freak out, or how they plan and they change their patterns, and they know. well, they're flying in the sky. They see the clouds too. But yeah, animals have this sixth sense, if you will, about weather, and it is real. And so watch animals next time you're thinking, oh, is a storm coming? Because I'll see people jogging and you'll see it lightning. And it's like, what are these people doing? And so I'm watching not the sky, but the animals and what they're doing. And they have that sixth sense. So watch animals.
Yeah, so you shouldn't be jogging during a rainstorm?
No, it's not a good idea. As a matter
With
of
an
fact, that
umbrella?
was
With an umbrella?
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's just not smart. Come on, a little bit of logic here. We did have a lightning strike a couple of weeks ago down here, and thankfully the people weren't home. Firefighters were awesome. They got the animals out or the dog out. We're just talking about animals.
Yeah.
And so you know what I'm freaked out most about with weather? And
Tell me.
that is lightning. And, for all of if you're watching, listening, don't mess around with lightning. I can't predict where it's going to strike. Nobody can. Um, to the precise home or apartment. Don't mess around with lightning. I tell kids all the time, and this is for adults too. When thunder roars, go indoors. It's a cliche. We say it
Nice.
all the time, but people can remember that. I don't
Yeah.
mess around with lightning. It freaks me out.
Okay, awesome. So what did being in television teach you about credibility and trust?
Oh, it taught me everything. And like you were saying, I mean, look, it takes one split second to lose trust, and it takes years to build up trust and a reputation. You have to know that. You have to know that you say one thing. This is another reason there's pressure. You say one thing, and your reputation, your trust is gone, and you can't get it back.
Right.
People will remember. And so this is always the number one thing. And even now, I want people to trust me. You want to maintain a reputation. And when you're in the media, it doesn't matter if you're on TV or not. When you're in the media working at a station, anybody can make up anything about you, right?
Right.
But you literally, you go to a Grizzlies game or something, and it's the way you walk. It's like, oh my gosh, somebody's looking at me. What are they going to say? That's another reason it's stressful. Going to dinner, I mean, people looking at you and all this stuff. It's a tough job. It
Yeah.
really is a tough job. Reputation is huge.
Well, and that's a celebrity, thing, right? Is that you don't necessarily think your weatherman has celebrity, but they do, weather person, woman, whatever. And I think that's I went out with my uncle. He lives in Indiana at the time he did, and we went. He was in the Fort Wayne, yeah, market. And we went out some places for dinner and people are coming over and, I'm like, this is my uncle, but to me, but everybody's like, oh, there he is, it becomes a whole thing. And so now you're living your life. Imagine everybody listening, if everything you said and everything you did in your business was being broadcast. It makes for, a stressful environment when you have to be careful, everything you say, how you show up. But guess what? Everything you do and say on social media is the same because, it only takes a minute for you to say the wrong thing in any place and become part of a problem.
That is so true. And one thing that I started telling kids and now, like you just said, I mean, adults, anybody, any business owner, POP, the acronym POP, post only positives. And you're safe. You just never know. Always think before you post, business owners. You have to do social media to be a successful business owner. Maybe not everybody, but most people have to do it. And so post only positives. I would give that advice to any business owner.
Yeah, love that. So forensic meteorology. So for everyone listening that has no idea what that is, give us a little background. What does that mean?
Yeah. So basically, I was a forecaster, right? And now I'm a hindcaster. What the heck does that mean? I mean, really, I'm basically a weather detective. There's only probably a few hundred of us in the country, in the United States. There's not many. So what I do basically, all right, let's say there's a car accident, right? I'm thinking of a case, Michigan, and the two parties, they wreck, right? One person says it was raining. Another person says, nope, it was sunny. Well, it occurred over an area that, it was really in a rural area. And people tend to forget they have their own memories about weather. And the cases I'm dealing with, mainly attorneys are my clients, insurance companies, individuals as well. But people have their own memory of what the weather was on a certain day. And normally the other person disagrees.
Right, and
Uh,
it's usually in their favor, right?
it's you, of course. It was raining. It wasn't.
Right.
So that was on an individual level. But of course, you're the host here. You asked me the questions, but forensic meteorology in business is big, and it's becoming bigger because storms are becoming stronger. And you wouldn't believe the amount of money that are involved in some of these cases. And really, to be honest with you, forensic meteorologists are not that expensive when you look at the big picture of what a case actually could go one way or the other. Because if something goes to a jury, you never know what's going to happen. Doesn't matter how good you present things. When at the end of the day, it's up to the jury to decide, you know, what they're going to do, and nobody can predict that. I don't care how
Right.
good of an attorney or a meteorologist you are. It's down to a jury. Anything can happen.
The thing that sprang to mind when you were talking about that is, Tracy Morgan and the Walmart truck, and I don't know if that was weather related. I don't remember any of the details of it, but let's just say there was weather involved, and I think he got millions of dollars from, he was in an accident with I think it was Walmart. I won't swear to that, but I'm pretty sure that's what it was, but he won a very big case. So I'm imagining that is, if we throw weather into the mix, then that can be pretty important where you come in. So you're the expert witness. So what does it take to become an expert witness?
Part of what it takes is I was really fortunate to be able to leverage the career that I had, because as an expert witness, you have to be able to explain complex meteorology topics in a to a non-technical audience, a jury, a judge, counsel, and you're in a legal setting. If I were to sit and tell you about the jet stream maxes and all this, and I wasn't able to tell you what that meant, or let's just say bring it to a layperson that's not a meteorologist, you are not going to be very successful. So my television experience has allowed me to be able to communicate complex meteorology topics in a non-technical way. And I would say that's one of the biggest challenges of being an expert witness, really, to be honest with you. And so I was fortunate enough to be in TV to develop those communication skills. And just you just try to talk like we're talking right now, and keep it simple.
Well, the interesting thing is we're all an expert witness in our own business, but a lot of us don't speak that plain language that is necessary to communicate what we do. And I think that that's a revelation I just had while we're sitting here is that if you're not able, and I hear this all the time when I'm in a chapter where there are people who work in IT, as a good example, is they tend to talk about all these high level things that nobody has any idea what they are. And in their mind, they know exactly what it is because that's what they do, but they don't communicate it to the layperson. So maybe that's you need what's that show? Tell it to a 10-year-old or a 5-year-old, whatever the age is. If a 5-year-old can understand what you do, then you're speaking the right language. But if you're speaking to them and they look at you like you're crazy or an adult, then, you may have a problem with your marketing and, your commercials about what you're doing if they're not reaching everybody.
You're exactly right. Everybody's an expert when it comes to their own business, and if you cannot communicate that to potential clients, then you're not going to have as many. And you're so right. I think that's such a good point to any business owner listening. Is communicate what you do, what your service is, because if I don't know what you do and how you're going to help me, I'm I'm not going to know. I may contact somebody else, or yeah, and so you lose a client. I think a lot of people um, miss that mark. Messaging, it's messaging, marketing. so important for business success. And so, yeah, if you haven't done that, and maybe most people haven't, or some people haven't, yeah, I would definitely encourage you to think about that. Maybe this week, or maybe whenever you're listening to this podcast, whenever you hear it, just try it. And what could go wrong, right?
Yeah. Well, and if you didn't catch the previous podcast episode, Jim Rosemary was the guest. He talked about your benefits. You should really be talking about the benefits that you bring, not, what you do. And that's a great also follow-up to this one to build on that. So to build on something, let's to talk about trust. So how do your clients decide whether to trust you?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it's reputation, a lot of it's communication. Um, it's an interview, and most of my work, I'll be honest with you, is I would say a lot of my work is outside of the state of Tennessee where I live, and so you have an interview, and the client, they interview you, and they get a feel. You tell them about your successes. I talk about my successes, and I think most people can look through somebody and be like, I don't know, about that person. They seem to be blowing smoke. So basically, just talking to the clients and saying, look, if you hire me, I'm working for you. You're paying me. And I think reputation, people talk in litigation. In the attorney industry, they talk more than you think they do on both sides, plaintiffs and defense. And so just building up reputation and trust and working your hardest. The client, my father-in-law, ultimate business guy, in my opinion, he tells me, he's like, look, the client's always right. The customer's always right. Now, there's one thing I will tell you in my business, where the client is not always right. I had a client ask me to remove the uncertainty and data limitations in a forensic report. And I said, I'm sorry, I cannot do that. That goes against the principles of what I'm doing. So you can have your money back. I'll give you your money back. I'm not taking that out of my report. That's part of ethics, for an expert witness to do. And ultimately, he came around and said, "Okay, yeah, we'll leave it in the report." And I said, "Yes, we will.
Yes, we will.
Otherwise, find another expert."
Right, which there aren't that many of, which is good for you. So,
Well, yeah, there's not many. That's true.
how do attorneys find you typically today?
Yeah, well, you and I were just talking social media. I work, as a business owner. This is another thing. As a business owner, I find out that I work harder as a business owner than I did in television. And you can get so addicted to work that you have to stop sometimes and balance yourself, and balance your family. Sometimes my wife says, on the weekend, turn your computer off, just put it down. But I would say social media, blogging, is huge. There are expert witness directories that you can pay for. I've got something that's coming up that's really exciting. I can't talk about it right now, but it's a partnership, with a business where we're looking to actually do some matching. Because let's say somebody in California has a fire case and they have no clue about me, right? But if we start to match needs, for a case, then you can really get some visibility. But I'm always on social media blogging. It's amazing. And Tammy, look, these algorithms now, I'm just talking social media with, artificial intelligence. It is hard to stay at that top.
Right,
I mean, Google could have changed their algorithm this morning. I don't know. I'm not calling out Google. I have no idea. I haven't checked
right.
yet. That's another thing I do every morning. What has it changed? What has changed to where I'm going to rank? And that's a big, big part of my job. I don't love it, but it's something not just for my business and industry, but everybody. You got to keep up now. It is more challenging than ever to keep up. If you're not paying attention, you have to stay awake. And you even on weekends, I try to keep up, and it's hard. It's really hard.
Join the Art Academy in Memphis. Master the skills needed to create stunning, realistic oil paintings. With expert instruction, you'll refine your craft. Enroll today at artacademyofmemphis.com. Awesome. All right. So I want to transition a little bit. One thing that's become obvious as we're talking is your business isn't built necessarily on transactions. It's really built on expertise, trust, credibility, all the things we've been talking about, right? So kind of brings us to networking. So let's talk about BNI and the challenge of being what some will call a unicorn. So you were in a chapter, you kind of have a unicorn kind of business because there's really not anybody doing what you're doing, right? It's unique. And there are other unicorns and lots of chapters. I like to think of, I don't like to think of it this way, but business coaches, which is what I am, are kind of unicorns because it's hard for people to define what I do is different from the business coach in the next chapter and so on and so forth. And there aren't that many of us. So what originally attracted you to BNI?
Yeah, look, networking,
Okay.
really. I had, and by the way, if your business coach, and yeah, didn't you get a 100% on this Clifton score? Yeah,
Oh, the power of
'cause I
one.
always, it amazed me. That's a tough test.
Yes.
Yeah. So BNI, literally, I had coffee with a guy, and he was a financial guy. I'm a meteorologist. I'm two different industries. And he said, "Have you ever heard of BNI?" And I said, "No, I haven't. I have no idea what BNI is." And he said, "You should try it out. You should go to a local chapter." And I did. And some of the business lessons that I loved my chapter. And some of the number one lesson I learned, because I went into BNI thinking, okay, it's time to get clients. I'm in BNI now. Give me my clients. It's not how it works.
Right.
Giver's gain is the number one thing that I remember in BNI. That lesson that went into my head, and I guess my point is relationships. You develop relationships first. You don't look for what can I gain. Giver's gain, that always works out. I have noticed that. BNI taught me that, and so relationships, giver's gain, the rest will take care of itself.
Okay. So what did you hope before you kind of knew what it was? What did you hope it would do for your business?
Well, I hoped it would grow my business, and I mean, that was really why I
The
got
main
in.
reason, right? Yeah.
The,
Most people do
the
that,
main
right?
reason, and it did.
Yeah.
BNI really did, because it taught me how to. A lot of people don't like networking. I love it. I used to hate it. It used to intimidate me, but I love networking, and that's really the power of BNI, right? Networking and referrals. I saw how it works, and I will tell you that. Um, the person who comes to paint my house, or the person who comes to fix my HVAC, almost all people are from BNI
Right.
because I trust them,
Right.
right?
Yes.
We're talking about trust, and you
Yes.
develop this trust in these relationships. And so most of the people that still deal with BNI people all the time. They
Yeah.
do most of my work,
Yes.
to be honest with you.
Do you
Web,
feel,
web stuff. I mean, all kinds of stuff.
yeah. Do you feel like they immediately understood what you did?
No. That is probably one of the most complex challenges that I faced, was that 30-second elevator pitch that BNI does. And boy, did that really taught me, how to explain what you did. Nobody really knows, to be honest with you. There's only, and look, I don't know if there may be more than a few hundred in the country. I'm not sure, but if you look at the data, generally 200-300 people that do this on a full-time basis. So BNI taught me that, but nobody knew what it was.
Right.
My 30-minute presentation,
10
that
minute. Yeah.
10 minutes, felt like
Yeah.
30 minutes.
You get it
Yeah,
was
10
30.
minutes. I think people started to understand and really found curiosity, and really were trying so hard to get me clients. And that's why I love BNI. We're in it together, right? We're in it to
Yeah.
grow our businesses. And one thing about BNI I love also is the I in BNI, business networking international. I mean,
Yeah.
what kind of other organization allows you to tap in to resources where you can connect with people globally?
Right.
And I really my last few months of BNI, I started to utilize those online resources, and I encourage any business owner listening, if you are a BNI member or if you're not, take advantage of those resources, the speed networking that they do. There's so many resources at BNI, and it did help me. Those speed networking events, I actually got a client out of that. And so take advantage of everything BNI has to offer.
Awesome. So, do you feel like some professions are easier to refer than others?
Absolutely. Certainly I do. Um, yes. To answer your question, because I see the success stories all the time in BNI, and it's just like, oh, hey, I got a guy who knows this lady and this person, and just seeing that power each week, it was exciting. It's a lot easier than what I do. Yeah, I mean, I would say uh, definitely it's a lot easier for some industries than others.
Yeah. And looking back, what do you think were your biggest challenges working in that framework, so to speak?
Yeah, the biggest challenges were to figure out who needs my services, right? And I loved my chapter because everybody tried so hard to get me clients. I mean,
Right.
really, really, really hard. And so just trying to connect me with attorneys, insurance professionals. Look, there are attorneys and insurance professionals that have no clue what a forensic meteorologist is,
Right.
which I found crazy. But some of my friends that were insurance agents didn't know what it was.
Right.
Um, and so that's a challenge. It's a real challenge, but it taught me a lot.
Yeah, one of the things I notice is that a lot of members network what I'm going to call horizontally. They're primarily looking for opportunities with the people in the room sitting around them. Does that resonate with your experience?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
absolutely. And as a BNI member, somebody can say, "Well, I know this person." You have to follow up. If I don't follow up, then it's not the person's fault who's referring me to somebody else. It's not like it's a bad referral. I have to follow up. I have to intentionally say, yes, let's meet for coffee. Let's talk one on one, and have that, relationship building, because they've handed it off to you. Now it's your job to close a deal, as far as, a business transaction. So yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, and I think that horizontal networking, sometimes, so if you're kind of just horizontally looking within the chapter, you're asking for who you need within the people that you meet, you're seeing every week. Some professions like yours, maybe mine, others that they require maybe a more strategic approach to a vertical kind of process. So you're hitting different people in different ways. Do you feel like that might have been true for your business? It kinda
Yes.
included you, but
Yeah, no, 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 definitely it's true. It's not just horizontally, it's vertically as well. And when I think vertically, I think, okay, I think social media, to be honest. I think my website, right? I'm thinking who can see my website, because that's how a lot of people find me. And how can look, at the end of the day, forensic meteorologists, we're competitors. We go up against each other in court. We're expert witnesses. At the end of the day, we're friends as well. So it's like, you're trying to provide valuable content where you can rank high, and you have to be very careful because I have to stay in my meteorological lane. When it comes down to litigation, I can't overstep and act like an engineer. I'm not an expert. I'm not an engineer expert.
Right.
I've got to remain in my expert lane. And so, yeah, horizontally, vertically, any approach for me.
Yeah.
Is what I take.
Perfect. Well, so, you ultimately left BNI. Do you feel like it didn't necessarily was the challenge of it that you were maybe not looking at a strategy for how to work BNI outside of just the people in the room potentially?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I would say yes. And in fact, I've even thought about re-entering BNI, and because my last few months of, I would say, of BNI were the best, and they were the best because I started to. I mean, like I said earlier, I don't want to beat this horse, to death or whatever, but really, uh, taking advantage of the resources, because we're most BNI members, we're thinking, all right, we meet on a certain day, a certain chapter, we go do our other thing, right? And we do our referrals, we, our CEUs, all that kind of stuff. But the resources and the speed networking, I was like, maybe I should stay in this. But it was one of those things where it just, it wasn't, people step out of BNI all the
Yeah,
time.
for
And
sure.
I've seen people come back.
Yes.
So it's just one of those things that I just, and it's interesting that I'm sitting here saying I didn't have time for BNI.
Yeah.
But at that time, I didn't have time to be at a certain place every morning
Right.
and find substitutes. And I did not want to go against that because I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, if I'm not doing it, then it's not benefiting the chapter and it's not benefiting me.
For sure. So I want to, we're going to take a little journey here in a minute, but what advice would you give another business owner who feels like they are a unicorn in BNI?
Yeah, just hey, don't worry about failure. You're going to fail as a business, and what you do is you learn from your failures, and you fail, you get knocked down, get back up. It's okay to fail. It is fine to fail. I've failed 2 or 3 times, before success. Be patient. Work hard. You have to work hard.
Yeah.
And if you don't, you're just not going to grow. This is my beliefs. You
Yeah.
can disagree with me.
No, you're
Um,
good.
I mean,
So I
so go ahead.
I was gonna say, I'm just gonna embellish on that because there's a saying, don't work hard, work smart. So I want to show you something. So this is on the slide. So if you're watching on YouTube, you're going to see, and if you're not, I'm going to describe it because you can't see it. But because I was preparing for this interview, I did a search inside Connect, and I found, guess what? Hundreds of attorneys within BNI. Because I know that's your top one, right? So I decided to see what would this landscape actually look like. This is just one page. What is your reaction to seeing this?
I love it. And like I was saying, I mean, just since we have connected, of course we've known each other, but connected about this podcast, I've just started realizing the resources that I had. And yeah, connect. I mean, when you're showing me the screen, I want to go sign up again. Uh, it's the power of being I. Look, attorney. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
it's great. It's great, and I think a lot of people, Tammy, I think a lot of people don't utilize this
right.
as much as they should. I really don't. At least that was my experience in my chapter, and it was my experience. I only the last couple of months did I see stuff like this, and I'm like, wow. And I did go to another chapter in Colorado, and we're all doing the same thing for each other. We're
Right.
helping each other grow. And I found attorneys there, and I was like, oh my goodness. I went to another chapter. I found an attorney. So
Yeah.
yes, the power of BNI is really, really amazing.
Well, don't feel bad that you've probably never seen this page because I will bet you lots of money that if I pulled aside, a bunch of BNI members, they would have no idea that this exists, right? Because of what I do and how I work, my number one Clifton Strengths is strategy. So I, normally think about these, and it's why I coach, right? Is because I understand that there's value in having a plan to, I think BNI is wonderful for getting people in a room and teaching them, that there's power in numbers because that 6 degrees of separation that we, have that Kevin Bacon game is I can ask you who, I want to meet so and so, and you probably are going to be able to find somebody in between, me and that person if we talk long enough. And what people don't recognize is there's more, and I think that they unintentionally limit themselves to the people sitting in the room. Um, So, seeing that now, how might your strategy for networking be different if you had thought of it? And I know you know that it's a global audience, but would you kind of seeing this change your thought process and how you might approach it were you to come back?
100%. I mean, it's an easy answer. You're showing me, just looking at the screen right now. I mean, it's almost like, in businesses we're always thinking about ROI, right? And so just seeing the screen right now, BNI, it is not that expensive. Well, you get one or two deals and
You're
it pays
good.
for itself.
Yep.
You're good. I mean, really. So just seeing the screen right now, if I connected, all right, we're talking about connections here.
Yes.
That's what we're talking about. If I connected with one person and there was one transaction done, that pays for 365 days of BNI. Just one
Right.
person. That's it. So
Yes.
just seeing that is the power of the connections with BNI. As a business coach, you're pretty much telling me, hey, here are the resources. They're right
Yes.
there in front of your face.
Yeah.
Take advantage of what BNI does.
Yeah, so and that's just the start, right? Is so there's really a ecosystem that is involved in any referral strategy. And what do you say we take a crack at building yours right now?
Oh, sure.
You game for that?
Absolutely.
All right,
I'm
so
game. I'm down. Let's do it.
all right, so we talked about attorneys. I'm going to guess there's specific attorneys within that list, right? So give me kind of just the smattering of a few of them.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I probably the best connections for me. I see legal and accounting. I mean, I, uh, I'm not probably matched prime for an accountant. I'm not an expert in accounting. But when I see anything like insurance, property law, oh, Elliot, personal injury, if I'm saying that correctly, personal
Yep.
injury law, Elliot would be a great contact for me.
Yes.
Let's see. Legal and accounting. I'm not an expert. Always try to stay in my lane. Real estate is another one. Weather and real estate go hand in hand. Let's see, business law, no. Business law, no. But there are several connections there. But Elliot, let's connect. What is that?
Purposely didn't show people's last names or where they are because we're going to get John back in Biennitis so we can figure out how to connect him. But and I'm going
I
to get
think so.
I'm
I
going to
think
get
I'm
those
back in.
referrals.
Yeah, yeah. And I'll tell you another thing that I I was in the green sometimes, but I was also not in the green. I guess if you don't know BNI, you don't know what I'm talking about. But you've got to have a certain number of CEUs and referrals, and that's the beauty of it because it keeps you accountable, right?
Yes.
And that's the beauty of it. It makes you work to create these connections. But yeah, seeing your screen, I think I've already made up my mind. Let me get that checkbook back out.
We don't take checks anymore, but we will take your credit
Oh,
card.
okay. Well,
And
hey,
it's
whatever,
not me because
whatever.
I don't. I'm not a. I'm just a member. So there's that.
Staying ahead in a world driven by technology is key. At Wisdom Integrators, we don't just solve problems, we create opportunities. Wisdom Integrators, connecting your world, solving your problems.
But I do want to open your mind a little bit more because this is what you did is perfect. What you did is look at that and crossed off who you didn't think was a fit, right? But what you said earlier was that lawyers talk, right? Lawyers know each other. When if you're an attorney, you're in an environment where there are others. You went to school with others. You probably belong to an association with others. You might even work in a big office with others. So they know each other. So while you're thinking to yourself, they're not a fit for me because they're in legal and accounting, I think you said was the one that was not. But that the estate planning attorney probably knows like somebody who's doing the things that you need. I wrote down a few more. defense attorneys, insurance adjusters, insurance investigators, which I think are different because I know when I had a car accident, it was actually weather. Well, technically, it wasn't weather related; it was water related. I was on my way to a BNI meeting, and it was wintertime, and I was coming down a slight hill, not very big, but the city had they were doing construction in the road, and they had opened up a water main, and so the water was pouring. Actually, this would probably be a good case for you. It was a long time ago, but the water was streaming down the spans of 4 lanes, and nobody knew. This is the Mid-South for if you're listening outside the area. It doesn't usually snow here, and it doesn't usually freeze here. But guess what? On that day, it was cold enough for ice, and so it was black ice, and they were one after the other coming down, and all of a sudden they lost traction, and I got sandwiched between two people. I know how to drive because I'm from the north, but nobody can drive on ice. But the
That's true.
person, I navigated around the people in front of me that were not doing what they needed to do, and I went off the side. But somebody from behind didn't know what to do and slammed into my car, pushed me into another car who had gone off the side but not hit anything. So now I became a pancake between two people. And then another person, there was a police officer, somebody had already called the police or whatever. The police car shows up, and then he's behind that person, and another person spins out, comes in, hits the police car, and another car came. I mean, it was ridiculous. I got sandwiched between two. Another car hit as I'm videoing what's happening to mine because I want to be in court if I need to have evidence. I've got it. And another car spun, turned backwards, and slammed into another. So my car got hit 3 different times because of an ice condition, which was the city's, and I didn't have to pay for any of it because I was not at fault. Actually, 2 different insurance companies ended up because there was 2 different cars. But, I digress, and we're running long anyway, and I apologize.
No, you
for
don't
that.
digress because that sounds like the perfect case for me.
Yeah.
And first of all, I'm glad you're okay.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're okay. But a lot of and just tell me to quit talking whenever. But actually, most of my work involves accidents like that are years old. Again, whoever was involved in the crash, they probably remember it differently. You
Right.
got and some police reports are different. That's
Yes.
another thing. You've got a county report or maybe and then an ambulance report. They write down weather conditions, but they're different sometimes.
Right.
Everybody has a different memory. But I'm glad you're okay. But that is the type of stuff
perfect
I
one to
deal with.
call for you. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. So I also wrote down engineering firms, risk management consultants, transportation companies because of just what I just said. Right? Is they're out on the road all the time. Accident reconstruction experts because they're the ones like I had the adjuster came and looked at the car. I'm sure somebody went to the site and decided, whose fault was this. I'm sure there were multiples because there were different insurance companies involved. Property damage consultants because I know people spin out into people's businesses and all the things. Construction litigation attorneys. So if I hit some of them.
Yes, you're nailing it. That's exactly right. Yeah, engineers. I work with accident reconstruction engineers. I won't say all the time, but certainly there have been several of those where look, I'm not an expert, right, in accident reconstruction. He's not or she's not an expert in meteorology. Boom, we combine, and then we're trying to solve the case objectively. I don't care what side I work for. I'm going to be objective as possible. So is any other expert witness.
Yeah, love that. So if you could intentionally build 5 relationships from that ecosystem over the next year, where would you focus?
I would focus on as far as individuals and type of what kind of work. Yeah, I would do engineering. Like there's engineers that are part of hurricane damage that are saying should this house have stood up and 105-mile-per-hour winds, was it engineered enough, right? But the engineer doesn't know about meteorology, and I do see that in this business, and I'm sure maybe I've crossed my lane, but you have to remain in your lane. Go ahead.
I have an example of that actually. We have a local member who parked his all of his business stuff, trucks, equipment, etc., under one of those overhang situations. It's not a garage, but it's meant to be like an open garage essentially. So it's open, front and back, and but it's got a roof on it, and that collapsed in one of the recent storms that we had. So that put him out of business, right? Is because he can't afford. I don't know what his insurance was, but he can't afford to have all that stuff replaced tomorrow. And the insurance takes a minute. So, and that was a weather related scenario that I didn't think of until just now, that I could probably connect you to.
That would be great.
And
That
he
would
dropped
be
out of B&I because his renewal was up, and he was like, "You know what? I don't even know when I can get my business back up and running. So I can't afford, and I don't know how much I'm gonna have to spend. So I can't
right.
afford to do this and not have a business and, all the things." So it was a bad consequence altogether, that, the perfect bad storm of things. So go ahead, keep going. Give
Yeah,
me one
no,
at a time. Just give me one more you think would be a good fit.
adjusters
Okay.
would be a great fit.
Okay. So, were any of those people in your chapter?
That I dealt with? No, no, they weren't. But one of them referred me. Or no, it wasn't my chapter. It was the speed networking that I got referred to an attorney in New York for a slip and fall case, personal injury case. Again, I'm on both sides, plaintiff and defense. But I did get a case out of that from that speed networking referral.
Yeah, so it sounds like your business isn't a horizontal networking business so much as it is a vertical networking business, right? Is we need to look outside and up, different. BNI provides that structure, and there are other ways to do that. If you're not in BNI, that you don't have to be, but you're paying for that structure of people who, the givers gain of it, want to help other people and get referrals and give referrals and so forth. So would you agree that that's you're more of a vertical than a, kind of people in the room are not going to be, you need the people in the room because you said, I need HVAC, I need whatever when things go wrong, but the people in the room are not necessarily connected directly to the people that you need.
Yes, in fact, I feel like I'm being coached, and I love it
Yes,
because
you might be.
yeah, yes, I haven't thought of that, but you're right. It's more of a vertical. I really like. That's why you do what you do,
Yes.
because I didn't think of that. But yeah, yeah, that it is more vertical now that I think about it.
And do you feel like other people might be misdiagnosing how they need to work the system also in their networking?
Yes, I do because I can tell you that I can speak from experience because I did not even know that verticality, as a business that if you don't like, you were talking about strategy, right?
Yes.
And so I like to learn something new every day. I've learned a lot today by being
Perfect.
on this podcast.
Yeah,
And YouTube show and wherever it's being
it's
broadcast
everywhere.
everywhere, all over. So
Yes.
yeah, think vertically. I'm thinking vertically right now. When we get done, I have a lot of work to do.
Well, and it's not uncommon, like I said, is everybody, we come in wherever we are. It doesn't have to be BNI. It can be a chamber event. You belong to a chamber, whatever chamber you belong to, you go there for the same reason as I'm hoping to bump into someone that would be my
Right.
client. Right. This is my husband and I have a little lab strategy, lab networking lab that is, I put him through it because his approach, he never thought about it, just like you said, is I go into an event, I hope to meet somebody who's my client, and then I call it a day, because I do or I don't. Maybe I got one, and that's great. But if you walk into your membership, whatever it's in, with a strategy and how you work it, and is my business a vertical or a horizontal, then you're much more likely to be successful in building those relationships that you're looking for that are going to grow your business. And then obviously you help support other people. So would you say this conversation has changed the way you're thinking about it now?
100%. It absolutely has, and my mind's going like crazy. I mean, if you are vertical like that, and somebody refers you, you've got to follow up on that.
Yes.
And I remember in my B&I chapter, one other thing that I don't know why I thought of this as you were saying that, but answer your phone. I mean, so many people don't answer their phone or
Yes.
leave it somewhere. I have it by my side as much as I can,
Yeah.
and answer your phone. It could be a client.
Yes, for sure. And we're running over, but I don't want to, if you can hang with me, everyone, you included, John, for a little bit more, I want to go into your Clifton strengths because you've said so many things along the way that will play out in your strengths. So your top five are: number one is belief. You have certain core values that are unchanging. These values provide direction and a strong sense of purpose. Number two is analytical. You search for reasons and causes. You have the ability to think about all of the factors that might affect a situation. Number three is focus. You can take a direction, follow through, and make the corrections necessary to stay on track. You prioritize, then act. Your number four is achiever. You work hard and possess a great deal of stamina. You take immense satisfaction in being busy and productive. And your number five is arranger. You are both organized and flexible. You enjoy figuring out how to align people and resources to get the best results. So, when you got your results back, what were your thoughts?
My thoughts were that I was really happy about it because, I mean, for me, it all starts with my faith and my beliefs. That's just the way that that it is, and without that, I just don't think I would. Well, I wouldn't have direction, and I don't think I would be successful. Faith first for me. That just is what that's what works, and that's the purpose and the faith. That's number one with me.
Okay. So,
So I was excited to see that. I didn't know what I was gonna get. I didn't
yeah.
know how bad it might be.
It's not supposed to be bad. It's supposed to tell you what you're great at, what your natural gifts are. So what stood out to me was that you are heavily concentrated in the executing domain. So belief, focus, achiever, and arranger are all about getting things done. Did that resonate with you?
It does resonate with me because if you don't do that, then I've let my client down. So I'm happy to see that. You have to your client is number one. I mean, when we're talking about business here, well, faith and purpose, but serving the client, the customer is always right. Unless the customer asks me to compromise my ethics, then the customer's not right. You know, service. You got to serve your customers. You got to serve your clients and work hard for them.
The belief comes in there too, is those core values of I'm not going to compromise my, expert opinion for what your outcome is what you want your outcome to be is important because that's number one for you is I'm gonna give you what the facts are, ma'am. So speaking of facts, number two, analytical. So how much of forecasting and expert witnessing work is really about finding the patterns and separating facts from assumption?
That's everything, and it's funny because for I don't forecast as much. My people will ask me, "What's the weather going to be in Memphis this weekend?" I'm like, I have no clue. I'm looking at Oregon and what happened at 2021 and this freezing rain event. So it's really hindcasting now. I still look at models and stuff, of course, and I have to keep all my seals and certifications. But yeah, hindcasting. Never thought of me doing that.
All right. And what I don't see, and it's very likely to be because of some of the things you've said here today, very likely to be in maybe your top 10 or, somewhere close by. I don't see any relationship building or influencing themes in your top 10. And you said earlier, you love networking and building relationships. So it was curious, I think because of how your brain is wired, because of that's the profession you work in is all about focusing on the facts and the what's happening and so forth. Do you think that some professionals struggle in networking because not because they're not capable, but because they're trying to maybe network in ways that don't fit how they're naturally wired?
Absolutely. I mean, look, it's not. I'm not wired to sit behind a computer all day, but that's the work that I'm doing, and I forget. I forget you've got to have that balance. Like you said, chamber, whatever works for you, right? And so I need to, what I think I've learned today on this podcast is I need, and I love dealing and working with people, but so much of my work is data and analytics, and behind the desk and whatever. But yes, yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it's made me think.
Yeah, when you have high achievers, so working all the time, that's one of the points of an achiever is I have high achiever also. Working every day, there's always something to do, something that needs accomplished, and getting to the top, being the best, all kind of tend to fall under those things. But you also have a ranger, which is a lot of the things that you're doing today. Is you're in court, you're looking at the weather patterns, you're trying to grow your business. So you're, kind of, I like to think of those as the maestros. They're kind of, organizing all the different things, and bringing them all together as one. But looking back, do you see a connection between what your strengths are and the networking challenges you might have had?
Yes, I do see that for sure. And like you're saying, I've never thought about horizontally and vertically. I never really understood what that meant until today, but when we get off, I'm still going to do some research on
We can
that.
talk.
Yeah. So yes, to answer your question, absolutely.
Well, and I think it's an important point for the listeners is whether you're in a business that is in the room horizontally makes sense for, there's some that just make, the firm we call finance, insurance, real estate, mortgage, they're already doing business with each other. That's a natural fit. But other people that need to look at that horizontal, and really, I'm going to argue that's a lot of people. It's really everybody, because once you kind of work with your chapter, that's the end of, you need more business. So, looking horizontally, or vertically rather, is what we should all be doing. So, what your strategy is going to matter for what your success is. All right, we're going to do a really quick fire, really quick fire, and then we'll call it a day here. So, just short answers to these questions. So, most challenging weather event to forecast.
Snow in the Mid South.
Okay, yeah, for sure.
You know,
Go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, I mean, snow in the Mid South is I would say my heart is hurricane. That's for me anyway, easier to forecast than a snow event in the Mid South. Or freezing rain.
One of the questions I was going to ask, I took it up and I'm going to ask it now anyway, because you brought that up, is why do the store shelves empty every time there's a snow event potentially coming our way? There's no bread, no milk. I'm from the north where we're just like, what? Oh, okay. We're just back to business.
It is amazing to me. Somebody can mention flurries, and then all the bread and milk is gone.
Oh,
And then somebody thought we had a relationship with a supermarket in town here. Like we got some kickback if I mention snow. That's not true.
that's
I don't
hilarious.
know. Bread and milk. I'm not sure. I don't have an answer for you on that one. I don't
That's a
even
good-
eat bread much.
That's a good networking opportunity we need to talk about later. All right. Most important networking skill.
I would say confidence and belief in yourself. I mean, if you don't believe in yourself and you don't have confidence in yourself, who is going to believe in you? Respect yourself also.
Perfect. And best business advice you've ever received.
Um, that the client is always right. And again, my father-in-law is the epitome of business success. And that's what he is ingrained in me.
Awesome. All right. And this finish the sentence. The future belongs to people
Who stay true to their core, their mission, their purpose, and like you said, there's no did say working harder, it is working smarter, but you have to work hard to work smart.
Yes.
If that makes sense, to
Yes.
learn how to be more efficient, and work smarter.
Or hire a coach. Sorry, shameless plug. All right.
No, you got to plug.
So you spent your career forecasting the weather. If you were forecasting the next 5 years for your business, what do you see coming?
I see a lot of challenges coming. I see a lot more need for what I do because people are just now understanding. I think some of the people are just now understanding what I do and the value I can provide. Look, let me give you some numbers real quick. I
Yeah.
know we're running long,
Yeah, we're fine.
but if you've got a case that's billions of dollars, right? And it could go one way or the other because a forensic meteorologist is involved. I said billions with a B. The ROI is going to pay off. If I mean, if you don't have that and you don't have that expert, then you might have lost $1 billion case.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, this was such a fascinating conversation, John. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Awesome. All right. And, one of the things I loved about this conversation is how it really highlights a reality that I see all the time in coaching is not every business should not work the same way. Some businesses thrive through broad relationship building. Others require a much more intentional strategy built around a specific ecosystem. So if you've ever felt like a unicorn in BNI or your business, and you've struggled to explain what you do, or you go to networking events and you're the one that's standing in the corner, not knowing who to talk to or what you should be getting out of this, then I am in development for the Strategic Networking Lab. So it's designed to really help professionals identify the right networking strategy for their business, their strengths, and their goals. And if you are listening, don't forget to A, subscribe if you have not, B, like, comment, all the things that help our algorithm go a little farther, and then share it in your chapter or with a business owner who you think might find it interesting. And don't forget to give yourself a CEU if you are a BNI member, and we'll see you next time on The Perfect 100. Thanks for listening to The Perfect 100. If today's episode sparked a new idea or inspired you to show up differently in your chapter, share it with your team, and be sure to subscribe so you never miss a conversation. And if you're curious about your own Clifton strengths and how to bring out the best in yourself or your chapter or your business, head to TammyZurak.com to learn more about building your superpowers into everything you do. Keep showing up, keep connecting, and keep building your perfect 100.